Happy Black Friday, Stacey.
Nope.
Do you do that?
I do not.
Neither do I.
I have done it one time when I wanted to get a DVD player for $25.
Oh, my God.
And I did it, and I got it. Yay!
Was that in the 90s?
Yes, it was. No, it was last year. What are you talking about? So I don't like shopping in general. So the idea of going when people are rabid
and mobs
is
form
absurd.
Yeah.
And when you logically look at it, there's no reason to do that. And I'm not even talking about because you can shop online. I'm talking about there's really no reason. Why do you need that Cabbage Patch Kit? You know what I mean? It's like, why is that? Is your child going to explode if you don't? Are they being held for ransom? I don't understand the anger and all of that, but I don't want to be around it, so I don't go out to do that. But then once Amazon came along, dude, I am online shopping.
Yeah, Cyber Monday. And actually, I do Cyber Monday because you can get really good deals.
You totally can.
You know, so I'm all about...
Sometimes it's like outlet malls and that it's not really a deal. You know what I'm saying? They've upped the price just so that they can lower the price and then whatever.
Whatever. It's lowest price I'm going to get because I'm not going to be that savvy about it. So I'm going to go online on Cyber Monday. We have machines for this nowadays, people. Like, grow up. You don't have to go.
No. Black Friday is movie day for me.
Awesome.
I don't know what
New tradition. What are we going to see this year?
I don't know what I'm going to see this year because I got to figure out what's going to be out there and what is the most popular.
Well, if neither of us have seen Murder on the Orient Express by the time Black Friday comes around, or if you want to go see it again.
Okay. That it'll be that. It'll totally be that.
When the chaos of popular culture makes your brain hurt, you really need relief in the form of a transfusion of analysis and humor. It's time for a POPeration. Join hosts Eric and Stacey as they dissect popular culture one bloody organ at a time. It's just what the doctor ordered.
It's that time of year.
It's POPeration and it's Thanksgiving. I'm Eric.
I'm Stacey. And we are talking about Thanksgiving, which is one of your favorite holidays during this holiday season.
Probably my favorite. I mean, Thanksgiving is my favorite holiday of the calendar year.
Not Christmas.
No, Christmas has got, and we'll talk about this in future episodes, I'm sure. Christmas has just got this whole thing around it. It's this whole season, as we've joked before. Mm-hmm. The Christmas stuff comes out, when back to school happens.
Correct.
It's too much. It's just it's a lot. What I love about Thanksgiving is that it's one day. And kind of everyone takes the day after, not everyone, but a lot of people get the chance to take the day after Thanksgiving off. And so it's a nice 4-day weekend, really.
Yes.
And the only thing you're supposed to do is gather with family, be it biological or chosen, and have a meal together and just appreciate each other. And if you're going to do anything else, it's a chance to think about what in your life you're grateful for and just practice a little bit of gratitude. And that's it.
It's a very nice holiday. And is it my favorite? No, and one reason is because I sometimes a meal with your family is hard.
Well, which is why I stick in there chosen family. I'd love to have a meal with my family over Thanksgiving. It usually doesn't happen, but we celebrate what we call Friendsgiving, and we just have a big meal. For, 15 to 20 people, we deep fry a couple of turkeys. The best way to eat turkey ever. And the side dishes come from, a whole bunch of gay men who know their way around the kitchen, and it's fabulous. And it's just, and the hosts are like, bring the dog, so my dog gets to go and eat turkey scraps. And, it's so much fun. And it's just, again, it is what it is, and it's not anything that it's not. What I also think about Thanksgiving when it comes to pop culture is it's just rife with possibilities, right? I mean, just family around the dinner table for the same reason you were kind of going, there's a lot of possibility there to tell some really good stories. It can be a very telling portrait of a family.
Which is, and I think that we're talking about Thanksgiving movies today.
Yep.
And that is exactly, they're basically slices of life. At least two of them are for sure just this well, they all are actually. Just kind of getting to this Thanksgiving meal, the story up to this Thanksgiving meal. One of them goes past it, but most of them are getting to this Thanksgiving meal.
Yeah.
And these are very. Now I know Canada has a Thanksgiving.
Uh-huh.
I forget what it is. It's not exactly the same time as ours, or I think it's early in the fall. I'm not sure, but these feel very American.
Yes. Thanksgiving feels like a very American holiday.
It does, even though other places are going to have Thanksgiving days. And Canada is North America, and theirs is very similar to ours. But I think we may have been meaner when we took it from the Indians. I'm just not sure. But this, but it's a weird thing. It's a very strange thing because there have been so many movies and so many TV shows and so many, you name it. Not a lot of Thanksgiving songs. No. But again, it's about, because it is, as you said, it's family gets together, and that can be great.
Yep.
And certainly the idea of it. And the commercials, when you see commercials, it is everybody having a great time passing the potatoes. That's not always how it is.
Well, last Thanksgiving, I mean, all I could hear about, because of course we had just gone through the 2016 election, and it was all about, if you're a liberal and you're going home and you have to sit next to your conservative uncle on Thanksgiving, like, how are you going to survive that meal? And probably in the conservative world, there was a whole bunch of stuff about, your liberal kids are going to come home from, how are you going to get through Thanksgiving? Because it is people who sometimes don't see each other a whole lot, coming together and being in each other's space and sitting around the table. And it's a thing that in our lives we talk, the Thanksgiving table is this metaphor for how do we get along with people who we didn't necessarily choose, but they're ours.
Correct.
And how do we manage that? And so we've got some movies that we wanted to talk about. 3 movies and then an honorable mention, which is technically an episode of a television show, but it functions like a little mini movie. So we'll mention that at the very end. But the first film that we want to talk about came out in 1989.
Now, here's something I will say. We talk about getting to the Thanksgiving table, and this is really a story about getting to getting there. This is not at the table, which the others, you see some of the dynamics around the table, and putting the table in quotes. But
and this is not about a family. This is about 2 strangers.
But again, it is about the holiday.
Sure.
And it is about trying the journey of getting there and what can happen just between leaving your office and getting to your house.
Yeah. Now, when we ask people on our Facebook page, what are some Thanksgiving movies you think about? The winner by far was this film.
And it's Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Directed by John Hughes. Again, came out in 89. Not about family necessarily. It doesn't, I mean, it's about the yearning for family, but it does not explore these family relationships.
No, it does not explore family relationships at all.
But it's about the desire to get home and to experience the holiday.
Because
and this yearning.
Thanksgiving is this, again, passing the potatoes in a happy, happy way.
Exactly. So this movie is about Neil, played by Steve Martin, and Dell, played by John Candy. They're both trying to get home for this weekend. And it's really just the most nightmarish travel film ever. Now, I do a lot of business travel. And so for me, I'll tell you what, this is my main feeling about this film. I suffer from a condition that I call vicarious embarrassment syndrome, and humor that really relies on being embarrassed for what the people are going through on stage or being humiliated in some way. I feel it. So Bridget Jones' Diary was torture for me because that entire movie is just nothing but Renee Zellweger in one embarrassing situation after another. And if you like the kind of humor where you're essentially laughing at people, that, and I got that it was very funny. Same thing with this. I understood from my critical eye that this movie was really, 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 really funny. But it was funny mostly because you're cringing for these people the entire time. And I was cringing the entire time I was watching it. And I could feel it in my body.
When this came out back in 89, I did not go see it.
Me neither.
It was not something that interested me. I like John Candy. I like Steve Martin.
I love Steve Martin.
This movie, the plot didn't really interest me. It was John Hughes, which... I love John Hughes, and we'll do a show on John Hughes.
I'm sure.
But, here's what's interesting. So I watched this to talk about it. And first of all, I realized John Hughes had major habits. There are shots that he would do in every single movie of his.
Uh-huh.
He loved the shot of the camera starting at the feet of someone that you haven't seen yet and slowly moving up the body of this person and then getting to this surprise head person. He did that with, I think, is it Dylan Baker who plays the spitting guy? Is that the guy?
Uh-huh.
He did it with him, but he's done it in Ferris Bueller, did it in 16 Candles. I mean, that's a go-to camera move.
Mm-hmm.
So there were directorial habits that I was suddenly really aware of. I was also, this is clearly 20th century. It's late 20th century.
Yeah.
I'm with you as far as I don't enjoy watching people get humiliated or embarrassed or hurt, which is why I didn't like Home Alone either.
Yeah.
Okay? So this one made me a little squirmy.
I was squirming the entire time.
But it was really interesting because it also said to me, John Hughes, as I said, he had habits, but he also had a demographic.
Mm-hmm.
And it was white people in Chicago.
Yeah.
Either it was home in all of his movies that I can recall. Home was always Chicago.
Breakfast Club, Ferris Bueller.
It was Chicago. Yep. And that's where he's from.
Yeah.
I get it.
You do what you know.
But it was just very... I get that it's on people's list, but I'll be honest, it would never be on my top 3 list. It is, I think it's probably a classic.
Mm-hmm.
And Steve Martin does a great job. John Candy, of course.
Yeah.
R.I.P. does a great job.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily a story that resonates with me, but also it felt dated. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
It just felt really dated.
Yeah, it didn't age as well as some others.
Some of it is the technology, that they're not able to. Part of the reason that it takes so long for him to get home, because this is a journey, this is a road trip movie,
but it's an accidental road trip.
It's an accidental, correct, and one thing after another happens. It's a Murphy's Law, the plane gets canceled and then diverted. Then the train. Every single in the car, ends up looking like
a husk of its former self.
All of this to say, in 2017, there are a lot of different ways that they could have gotten this.
Yes.
You couldn't make this movie just like this now.
No.
Because technology has changed so much. So that's part of the datedness. But another part, to me, there, and maybe it's a naivete, I don't know. But it felt very dated to me, and I just kind of went, oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I felt about it at the end of it.
Yeah.
And even when he gets home, he gets home, Steve Martin does, and his family's there. And they're looking like a Norman Rockwell painting when he gets there. And his wife comes down the stairs, and he introduces her to John Candy's character, and they hug, and there's a tear coming down her face, and I was like, I don't even know if in 1989 I would have had tears. You know what I mean? I sure as hell don't have them now.
Yeah. No, I don't know that you were meant to. I think it was just supposed to be, this is where the movie has to end, so let's just end it. And they wanted to end it on a sentimental note. In case you have not seen this film, and after our sterling recommendation are just rushing out to see it.
You're welcome.
There is kind of a minor reveal towards the end about one of these characters that's on the sentimental side of things, and it does kind of change the tenor of the film, which has up to this point just been kind of wacky, crazy, all of this kind of stuff. I will say neither one of these guys, Steve Martin or John Candy, are really terrific people. I think you're supposed to kind of think, oh, Steve Martin's the uptight city guy and Dell's annoying, but he's got a heart of gold, except that he doesn't half the time. Sometimes he really is just kind of awful in that he used Steve Martin's credit card to get that car and should not have done that.
Correct.
And there are just some things that, they both make choices that just kind of make you go, I don't know that I like either one of you. I don't know that I want to be on this road trip with either of you. Quite frankly, there's no one for me to kind of glom onto.
I agree.
As the person that I was kind of with, because Steve Martin was, even at the very beginning, I tell you what, as someone who does a lot of business travel, the fact that he was having this much of a shit fit because he couldn't get his first class seat. Oh, come on. You're going from New York to Chicago. It is not that long of a trip. And you're really going to give a flight attendant a hard time because in a flight that got canceled and diverted and rebooked, you lost your first class seat. and you're going to have that much of a shit fit about it. So right away, I was just kind of like, I'm looking at this through 2017 eyes, was just kind of like, oh, come on, dude.
Well, and that was part of my problem, is I did feel like it was, I felt white privilege all over it. and there was very little diversity as far as other cast members and things happening. But again, I'm going back, I think in a 21st century eye looking at John Hughes stuff, you got that.
Yeah.
Because he was this upper middle class guy who grew up in Chicago, and he made movies about upper class white guys in Chicago.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, so even at the end when you find out that John Candy doesn't have anywhere to go because his wife died 8 years ago.
Oh, so we're spoiling it. Okay.
Are you kidding me? It came out in 1989.
And no one's going to go see it after our
Not
review
after
anyway.
we've said it. I was like, what are you... Eric thought he was getting residuals. How funny is that?
No, I didn't. I just,
But no, you're like, that's not even a real, especially even on some of the other movies that we talk about, that's not even a real issue.
Yeah.
Your wife died 8 years ago. Well, I'm sorry, sir, but you've been wandering the roads for 8 years?
Yeah.
What the hell?
Yeah.
Even in 1989, what the hell? So I don't know. I walk away from this one going, I get that it's a classic. I get it. And I remember it was huge when it came out, but so was Home Alone, which I'm not watching that one again. It felt very dated to me. To me, it didn't necessarily travel the years
What I will say is that, John Hughes was always really great at getting these lovely cameos from not superstars, but people who were really great at cameos, right? I don't want to see Ben Stein carry a movie. Oh, Jesus,
no.
But we all know him from Bueller. Bueller. He was same thing here. He was this little guy that, announcing that a flight was canceled. And in the most annoying Ben Stein way possible. And it was just kind of fun to see him in that moment. Edie McClurg, same thing.
Well, she was fun that after listening to him, and he drops the F-bomb over and over, and finally at the end she goes,
You're fucked.
That was fun.
And after being, when you heard her on the phone, she was like, carved out of cream cheese in terms of the persona that they were crafting for her. And of course, she again, Ferris Bueller, very well known for being the secretary who's
you talk about he went off on the flight attendant. He went off on the car rental person too.
No, he's awful.
It was over the top. It was like, dude, you're at Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And and shit happens.
Yeah. And it was shitty for the rental car bus to leave him there with no car to pick up. But, you don't. Why are you mad at her? Like, she didn't do it, And yes, she probably shouldn't be on the phone with somebody while there's a huge line, people behind her.
Again, it was.
It just seemed. I know it was for comedy, but it just didn't. It didn't ring true to me. And part of comedy is it's funny because it's true, and this just seemed it's funny because you're annoying. But
it also may have been that it was funnier, and it's people who said this was their best one. I'm wondering, have you seen it lately?
Good question.
You know what I'm saying?
Good question.
It's your favorite Thanksgiving. If you remember it from how old you were when you saw it back in 89, you might want to take another look. That's not to say that you won't have the same feelings. You may very well love it just as much. We talked about bedknobs and broomsticks at one point.
Yeah.
You still have the same feeling. But I think some people might change their minds a little bit because of what all's happened since 1989 and now.
True.
Because it's not true now. It may have been back then, but it certainly doesn't ring true now.
And we've said on the show a number of times, so-and-so is a product of its time. And I think sometimes that holds water, and sometimes, we've also talked about this concept of things that age well, and I think this movie was probably really, really funny in 1989. I don't know if it's aged particularly well.
And I'm probably the wrong person to say because I don't think I would have liked it back then either because it was, again, as you, that whole humiliate, whatever that is, that disease you made up, I have it too.
So my friend Jenny made this up. Shout out to Jenny. Hi, Jenny. Created the term vicarious embarrassment syndrome. And and a lot of people do. It's one of those things where there's humor that makes you laugh with people, or there's humor because situations are just funny, and then there's humor that is completely at the expense of a character who's being abjectly humiliated on the screen in front of you.
Well,
and I watch those movies through my fingers.
I remember, this is why I know I have it, as a child, the Mary Tyler Moore Show. There were times because things would happen that would be embarrassing on there. Not crazy like we were talking about, but just little things. I would have to leave the room because I would get so squidgy. So that tells you where I am on that particular
So there's one moment in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles I do want to talk about because I initially had this reaction. So anybody who listens to the show knows Eric's a big old homosexual. Okay. The funniest or the most famous kind of moment from that movie is at one point they're in a motel room. They're sharing a bed, a double bed, a full-size bed, not even a queen-size bed. John Candy is not a small person. When Steve Martin sees the bed and he's just like, I have to sleep in this thing with you, ugh. And I thought, okay, late 80s, here we go, right? But then I thought to myself, look, Eric, I wouldn't want to sleep in a full-size bed with a stranger I just met who,
the initial ugh is not because of the homophobia. The initial one, I think, was just, it's a guy.
Yeah, it might have been even in its time.
Because he didn't, Steve Martin at that point, Steve Martin's character did not like that guy at all.
No, he was already annoying. And so the idea that you're going to sleep in a bed with somebody who's just annoying, already it was kind of, but the idea is like there's one bed, and it was part of the joke. I mean, I think it was a bunch of stuff going on. But no, there is that
it was 89.
But then there's this scene where they finally do get to sleep, and they're waking up, and John Candy is nuzzling Steve Martin. And at the time, you think that his wife is still alive because he talks about his wife all the time. So you're assuming, okay, John Candy has mistaken Steve Martin in his sleep for his wife. He's nuzzling up. They're spooning. And at one point, they wake up and they realize they're a little too close for comfort. And Steve Martin asks, where's your hand? And he says, between two pillows. And he goes, those aren't pillows. And they both jump up and kind of oog out.
That was the trailer. That was in the trailer.
Yeah.
Del. Why did you kiss my ear? Why are you holding my hand? Where's your other hand? Between two pillows. Those aren't pillows.
And I was just kind of like, yeah, I get it. I mean, I'm a gay guy. I wouldn't like that either, waking up with some stranger's hands between my legs that I didn't want to be there. But just the whole, that was the most hysterical thing that anyone had ever seen, I don't know. It's another one of those.
It's 89.
It's of its time.
It's of its time. That is exactly.
So that what was really funny then. But I think that, there's a lot of, I like a lot of the jokes in this thing, I just don't know how many of them really carry.
I feel like not a lot, to be quite frank with you. There was a couple of other cameos. I had forgotten that Michael McKean was in it.
Yeah, he played the cop.
He's so young.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, he looks so young.
And not that he did a bad job. He did a fine job. His role is not funny in the same way that Ben Stein's or Edie McClure's was. He's just the cop.
No. And now, do you remember Kevin Bacon?
What did he play?
At the very beginning, Steve Martin is trying to get a cab to get to the airport.
Right.
And so across the street of New York, busy, Kevin Bacon is doing the same.
Yeah.
There are no words, and I don't even know if they filmed this at the same time.
Yeah.
Okay? But Kevin and Steve are racing down the street to try to get the cab.
And I totally wondered at that moment, Kevin Bacon must be coming back. That's why I don't think I tracked that as a cameo. I was like, oh, Kevin Bacon's in this movie. And I thought he must be somebody. At some point, he'll come back.
Oh, when
we'll
you
see
first
him on
saw
the plane.
it? Oh,
yeah.
no, I knew he didn't.
Because it's Kevin Bacon.
No.
No. But yeah, that was another...
All I did was I sat there and went, oh, okay, Kevin Bacon wanted to be in a John Hughes film, and this was his shot.
I guess. It also kind of makes me wonder if there's another John Hughes movie where someone's trying to hail a cab, and maybe Steve Martin is the cameo in that one.
I don't know. I don't know if it goes quite like that. Yeah. I think he just, Kevin Bacon was probably, I think that was after Flashdance, so he's probably trying to get a job. He's had his
and being seen as an adult.
Correct.
But now, you know what? 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, you can use a Steve Martin connection.
Oh, you know what? I just realized John Hughes' connection to Kevin Bacon was He Said, She Said.
Oh, right.
I forgot about that.
And she's having a baby.
I'm sorry. That's the one.
Yeah.
I just forgot. Kevin Bacon's connection to John Hughes is that one called She's Having a Baby. That's where it was. And this was about the same time as that. Because his hair was the same length. So I'm guessing that it was just a favor that was called.
Okay. All right.
Anyway.
So we're going to take a break. When we come back, two movies about Thanksgiving that I think we liked a little bit better.
Oh, yeah, I like these.
So we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and talk about movies that I would actually recommend that you watch while you're cooking the turkey.
Correct.
This would be a good film to just kind of turn on after the parade. If you're not into the dog show, turn one of these on.
You're listening to POPeration with Eric and Stacey. Take a deep breath. This may sting a little.
So we're back, and we're talking about Thanksgiving movies that are considered classics, which there aren't as many of those as there are Christmas movies.
Not nearly, and it surprises me that there aren't more movies about Thanksgiving again.
So, there is that. I mean, at the same time, when we talk about the angst of Thanksgiving, not only when you're there, but the getting there and all of that, it can be painful. Now. So we talked about Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, and I'll be honest, I walked away going, I didn't care for it.
It wasn't my favorite.
And we also felt like it didn't age well. It's from 1989.
I will say about my last word on Planes, Trains, and Automobiles was that while it made me cringe, I recognized that it was well done and very funny. But I recognized that it was funny as opposed to laughing hysterically because it was so funny.
I also recognized that there were, I just feel like John Hughes, he just had some habits. Man.
Yeah. And if this is the one that you haven't seen in a while, and there are others of his that you like better, you kind of go there. So the next one we're going to talk about,
we're going chronological.
It came out in 1995, directed by Jodie Foster.
Was this her second one after Little Man Tate? Little Man Tate was her first directorial, and I think this is her second.
It might have been. Well directed. If you look for Home for the Holidays on Amazon or iTunes or wherever you, it's not the one with Sally Field.
No.
Neither is it the one with Sean Young. No. There are 3 movies out there called Home for the Holidays.
I don't know either one of those.
They're there.
And I'm fine.
Yeah.
I'm fine.
I'm okay with that one as well. This is
Holly Hunter,
starring Holly Hunter. Yeah. And while, spoiler, the third Thanksgiving movie we're going to talk about is probably my favorite. This contains my favorite dialogue-free scene of a Thanksgiving movie ever.
Oh, yeah.
Which is when Holly Hunter...
Well, let's tell the story first, so you know what the deal is. So Holly Hunter is this... Well, she's just been fired.
Yes.
And she's going home for Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
Her parents... She has a brother...
And a sister. That's right, a brother and a sister. And her parents are Anne Bancroft and Charles Durning, who are... R.I.P. to the both of them. Amazing.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
This is brilliant. Her brother's played by...
Robert Downey Jr.
Iron Man.
Fantastic.
Yes. And it is... So she's going home. She doesn't... And she also has a daughter.
Yes.
Her daughter, who stays in whatever, she's from Chicago. Is that where she was?
I think so.
Chicago. Wherever. Her daughter doesn't come with. So.
And her daughter drops a bombshell on her right as she's getting out of the car to board the plane.
And she's just been fired.
She's just been fired. She's stressed out. She's not sure she wants to go home. Mm-hmm. She doesn't think her brother's going to be there, which is a point of sadness for her because her brother's the only person in her family she really truly likes.
Yep.
And right before she's going to get on the plane, right before her daughter drives away, oh, by the way, I'm having sex with my boyfriend this week.
For the first time.
And you can tell by the way that admission goes that she's raised her daughter to think for herself and make good choices and think things through. And she says, this is not some stranger. We've been talking about this, blah, 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 blah. But it's still like not what she wants to hear.
It's not the last words you want to hear out of your daughter's mouth.
In this moment, yeah. So here she goes to Thanksgiving, and she's got this annoying woman next to her on the plane, and she survives the trip and calls her brother from the airplane and cries a little bit, and you can tell she's having a moment. Gets off the plane. There's Anne Bancroft in full overbearing mother mode. Great performance.
Oh my gosh, it was fabulous.
Charles Durning, who you get the sense he really, really, really loves his kids, but he can also be kind of he can be a lot to take.
He doesn't know how necessarily.
Yeah,
he's that generation.
And they get in the car, and of course, Mom is smoking in the back seat. So right away, that's just like a moment from 1995 that I went, oh my God, ugh, these thin cigarettes. And there's this cameo from this actor who I have no idea who he is. I don't think I'd ever seen him in anything before or since. But as they are leaving the airport, and of course it's Thanksgiving, so it's like jam-packed. They're crawling on these 4 lanes of traffic.
I was going to say, there's like 4 or 5 lanes of traffic.
And she just kind of tunes her parents out for a second and veers out the window, and there's a man who's in the backseat of his car as his mother is yammering to him, and they just lock eyes and roll their eyes at each other, and it's like, ugh, here we go. And I thought for sure, I remember the first time I saw this, I'm like, okay, he's going to come back and he's going to be a romantic interest of some sort. He never comes back.
You're so funny.
He does, I just kind of think,
you thought him, you thought Kevin Bacon. You think everybody's coming back.
I do. I just think people are connected, and I think people, do these in movies for reasons, because usually when you kind of drop something in there like that that's so well done and so funny, it means something other than
it did mean something.
It did mean something. It just meant, oh my God, here we go. And she's not the only one who's dealing with this.
And she now knew she wasn't alone, but it still was the beginning of this whole holiday affair.
But here we go. And they will not comfort each other throughout this whole thing. They're both going to have to deal with their Thanksgivings all by themselves. So Robert Downey Jr. shows up, and he's the brother. And 1995, I guess this was a bigger deal than it is now. He's the gay brother, but
it was a big deal.
But nobody talks about it, right? I mean, it's like everyone just kind of gingerly. But they all know he's gay because
he does have a boyfriend.
Yes. Although boyfriend is not with him.
No.
And so kind of a major plot point of this whole thing is that for the first half of the movie, Holly Hunter thinks that they must have broken up, and she's really sad about it.
Because he's brought another friend with him to this
he's brought a man to Thanksgiving. And she assumes, well, this must be the new boyfriend.
But she also thinks he's a homewrecker because she loved the old boyfriend.
Yes, and so she's not fond of Dylan McDermott.
Correct.
Which, okay, how can you not be fond of Dylan McDermott?
He is very pretty.
So pretty and charming.
Oh, he's very charming.
At the same, he's all of those things. Mm-hmm. And so we learn later on, actually, Robert Downey Jr. has not parted ways with his boyfriend. In fact, before it was legal, they actually had a wedding ceremony that he didn't tell anybody in the family about, not even his sister.
Which was what hurt her.
Yeah.
So it's basically this weekend. It's the Thanksgiving weekend that she spends with her family. Mm-hmm. So it's this little slice of life of, because also she's got the drama where at some point she's going to have to let him know that she's been fired.
Yep.
Again, apparently. Mm-hmm. At some point she's, why are, her parents are like, where's my granddaughter? And she's, well, she didn't want to come, yada, yada. She also has a sister who is married and has the requisite 2.5 children. Yeah. The husband was an interesting acting. It was an interesting actor choice for me.
Yeah. So Cynthia Stevenson plays the sister.
She's wonderful.
She's fantastic in this role. But yes, there's another actress we're going to talk about in a moment that they're so good at playing annoying. You hate them, but you really ought to admire what they're doing because they're giving a very ego-free performance because they're so willing to be hated,
absolutely awful,
because they're so awful.
Yeah, but she's married to Steve Guttenberg.
Which
random. I found that a random choice for that character. Maybe he was just friends with Jodie Foster. I have no idea. Yeah. I found it weird. He was fine. Don't get me wrong. He was fine.
Well, he's annoying too. The whole family is annoying.
He was supposed to be, but I mean, he is an actor. I find him fine. I never found him, great. So he was fine in this. And again, yes, that family is supposed to be annoying. She's the good daughter, and that's her resentment, and so she's kind of a bitch the whole time.
Well, she's the good daughter, except that the other two take up mom and dad's attention a lot more. And that's what really gets under her skin.
Well, yeah, that's the whole thing, was when you're the good daughter.
But Claudia, who is the Holly Hunter part, is the favorite daughter, even though she's not the good one. I mean, at 2 points in this movie, one, Anne Bancroft goes on and on and on about the portrait that Claudia painted of her brother that still hangs over the mantle, and all the times that, she gets compliments for it. And there's this sense of, you're my talented daughter. And then there's this lovely scene between Holly Hunter and Charles Durning towards the end, where they describe when they were much younger, they went out to a tarmac to watch a plane taking off.
That's what they do. They'd always do that because he worked at the airport before.
And so, and the two kids are, the two younger kids are clinging to his pant legs, and she's just standing tall, and she just wants to see this plane. And he says, "You are fearless," and it does give you this sense that there's something about her that she's her brother's favorite too. It's kind of like, of course she's the favorite. She's Holly Hunter. That's part of it. She has this persona.
Here's what I want to say about, and this is a one thing that kind of didn't ring true for me in the family birth order. Is that the birth that I'm sure there probably are families where that does happen, but usually it's not the youngest that's the goody-goody.
Yeah.
And the oldest who's the artsy-fartsy. It's usually the other way around. Or, I mean, the oldest isn't... The character that Holly was playing, to me, felt very much like a younger sister. And the one that Cynthia played was an older. And so I had to keep reminding myself that in this story, Cynthia's character was the younger one.
Yeah.
Because she, she was clearly trying to be opposite of what her sister was, but also stand out, do the right thing. And so there's one moment, there's one scene that gives you a little glimpse into Cynthia's character where she breaks a little and she's not this one-sided bitch. And you see the frustration of being this person's sister all her life, which is what she has been, and being this guy's sister.
Yeah.
And that what she's tried to do with her life. Now, it doesn't last long, and so that took a little bit of the realism out for me as well. But again, I put some of this toward the fact that it was Jodie's second movie. Yeah. There were some weird choices made there.
Yeah. This relationship, I don't know that I would have called Cynthia's character the goody-goody or the good daughter.
I don't. Well,
to me, it was actually kind of reminiscent of the Gina Davis, Laura Petty storyline from League of Their Own that we talked about, where she just felt like she lived in her older sister's shadow all the time.
Well, I think that she does, but it's also the way that she dealt with that was going the opposite way, as opposed to in League of Their Own. Lori just tried to beat her at her own game.
Yeah.
And so that, as I said, this was a weird one in how it was written. Just because if they'd flip-flopped the ages, I would have been a little bit more comfortable with the way that they had
And I don't know that it would have changed the story much at all, except that maybe Jodie just wanted these two actors. I really want Holly to play this role, and I really want Cynthia to play that role.
And as I said, bottom line, it's not a deal breaker. It's still a really good movie, and there are so many lovely little scenes. There's, I can't think of his name now, but an actor. So she comes home, Holly's home, and from high school, there's this guy that always loved
David
her.
Strathairn.
David, that's him.
Now, that was the weird casting choice for me, because he's supposed to be the sad sack who's just annoying, and she's mad at her mom for inviting him over. He works as a plumber. She makes up, we get the idea that she probably made up this burst pipe or something that he had to come fix because he wanted Claudia to be in the same room with this man. And she and her brother are both like, oh my God, he's so depressing, he's so this, he's so that. To me, David Strathairn is one of those actors. I like him no matter what he does. And I legit felt sorry for him when he left the room and said, you look great, Claudia, it was great to see you, and just leaves. He's so much dignity. I didn't get him as the pathetic...
No. I agree 100%. And again, some of these choices I put down to directorial choices. They needed to do something else to make him to where I didn't like him. I agree with you 100%. I felt sorry for him. Yeah. And to me, it was just a matter of they weren't right for each other. As much as he had a crush on her, they weren't right for each other. He was not this loser person.
I mean, if you'd gotten back to that back room and it had been, Wayne Knight, Newman from Seinfeld had been back there, you'd have been like,
much easier to go, ooh.
And I'm so mad at Mom. Why did you do this? Why do you always do this to me?
But also, David's not hard to look at.
No.
So that was a weird. You're right. That was a very weird casting move.
I didn't enjoy that.
But that was another moment that she had. She's having to somewhat, she goes back home goes home for this Thanksgiving. And I think this happens a lot. You're there with your family that you don't see all the time, and you revert to your old roles.
Yes. Whenever I'm home with my parents, it's like, it's great for the first 3 or 4 days. And then there's this thing where I go and I'm getting my cup of coffee, and Mom's like, did you make your bed? I'm like, I'm getting my coffee. I'll do it in a minute. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm 13. Like, I'm in my 40s. Like, what the hell? But it's just... But, I don't know whether she starts treating me like a teenager first or I start acting like a teenager first, but neither one of us know how to break out of that. And that's just an essential truth about families that I think is just kind of important.
That happens when my family, last year, me and my brother alone, we went to Thanksgiving with my mom. She was getting ready to sell the house. Long story, doesn't matter. Point being that... for the first day or so, fine, whatever. And then we start reverting into me and my brother, our brother and sister from back in the day. Yep. And mom is, mom from back in the day. And I'm like, dude, I am in my mid-50s. This is not rolling. But it is. That's exactly what happens. Yeah. And that's what happens in this particular thing, which I thought was right on the money. That's exactly what happens.
Now, of course, it being a big, family kind of comes together, there has to be a big kind of secret that comes out, right? And the big secret that comes out in this one is actually it's not as big of a deal that she was just fired. It's not as big of a deal that her daughter's going to go off and have sex with this boy. The big thing ends up being that Robert Downey Jr.'s character had a wedding ceremony that had no legal bearing whatsoever in 1995. So it's just another reminder, wow, like it's been, 20 years or so since this thing came out, but a lot has changed in 20 years, right? And this is what made me, I no longer had any sympathy for the little sister after this, because her reaction was, I have friends in Boston. Did you think about me and how they might react to this? And it's like, no, when he was marrying the person he wants to spend the rest of his life with, little sister, he had no thoughts about you. Deal with it. But that was kind of the big, oh my God moment. It's what sends Anne Bancroft back to the back room where she can smoke in private. And it's what makes his dad, wondering like, oh my God, did you wear a dress? And it was just kind of this moment of 90s era.
Yes, it was very much a part of its time.
But I found that I was still kind of moved when Dad got on the phone with the boyfriend a little bit later on, and his way of making up, because of course he can't look at his son and say, I'm sorry, because he doesn't quite know how to do that.
That's not what that family does, yeah.
But he's talking to, his son's new husband, he now understands, and basically says, you're a good guy, you could have done better. And it's a little bit of shade, but it's a little bit of, your family, and I like you, and I accept the fact that you got married, and I remember being incredibly moved by that when I saw it. 1995, I had just come out of the closet, so that was like a new thing for me. This time around, I was still moved. I mean, that moment still worked. It didn't work to the extent that it had before, but it worked.
Now, one thing I liked was Robert Downey Jr.'s characterization. It was not a flamer.
No.
It was not a cliche.
No.
He was just a guy. He was the same guy who was her brother.
Yep.
And obviously that he had come out to them years before. Yeah. But again, he was still that, let's do something stupid brother.
Touch of ADD, maybe.
Yes, but that's also Robert Downey Jr., I feel. But yes, I agree with that. But he was also, he was, let's do something stupid, let's, and so they did a lot, there were things of regression as far as they really got into the, we're the brother sister that did.
And every time Holly Hunter reached for the car door, the car would inch a little bit forward, and you knew it was coming, and it was still funny because this is how brothers and sisters do.
Lucy and Charlie Brown. It was, and the football. But again, that was their thing, and we saw that that's a thing that's been happening since he learned to drive, and it's still happening now, even though she has a teenage daughter who's fixing to have sex. And so there were little moments like that were just lovely. Now, you've already said your favorite moment. I will tell you my favorite moment.
Okay.
Charles Durning's character. Some parts of his character remind me of my dad, to whom I was very close. There is a moment when they take her to the airport at the end. This is near the end. And they're putting her on the airplane. Anne Bancroft and Charles Durning are there. And this was back in the day when you didn't have to, there was no security.
Yep.
You didn't have to have a ticket to go to the gate.
No, this is a pre-9/11 movie.
Correct. And so they are there at the gate door watching her to go down the hallway that leads to the airplane. And they're, I like that when that you're talking about when they're sitting there looking at the old movies, talking about her being fearless.
Yep.
That moment, I love that. But this one, I remember they are hugging her, and she's getting ready to walk off. They've done their hugs. She's walking away. Charles puts his arm around Anne Bancroft, and he says, "We made her."
Yeah.
I had heard my dad say that.
Yeah.
And it was just like, I felt all the feels at that moment, and there were little moments that I think Jodie put in there that were just precious and perfect. And so for me, they made up for some of the missteps. Yeah. The little sister, that characterization of her and her family being so, they were awful. That doesn't age well because nobody's 100% in your family. but her other little things, the other details about it, the feeling of the family, they clearly love each other.
Yeah.
And, it was, I think it's a delightful film. I certainly think it ages better than Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
So the only thing we haven't talked about with this movie is, of course, what ends up being the little bit of love story that kind of, wraps it all up.
Yeah, we kind of ignored that part.
So Dylan McDermott, as it turns out, is not Robert Downey Jr.'s new boyfriend.
Gay.
He's not gay. He's there because Robert Downey Jr. said, I want you to meet my sister. So it turns out he's doing exactly what his mom did by trying to set her up with somebody, but he's just better at it than Mom is. Because even though Mom picked David Strathairn, who's not horrible, we both agreed, Dylan McDermott's he's dishy.
But also, where is her mom going to find somebody new? Yeah. They're in that small town, so Robert's character is going to have a better chance. But
he's got a better pool.
Oh my gosh, Dylan
McDermott, beautiful, charming, and what I learned from watching Home for the Holidays, I've never kissed him, but he's a good kisser. You can tell, like the way that those scenes are shot is right there, close up, and when Holly Hunter's knees get weak, mine did too a little bit. So yeah, he very charming, and I, as a single person, I kind of sometimes look at movies like this and go, did there have to be a boyfriend for Holly for this to be a quote unquote happy ending? But it's there. It works. I
don't think it had to be, although maybe it did in 1995.
Maybe, but it does kind of represent that, she's going back to her life, which the way that we left her life was kind of a shithole. Although you kind of get the idea with that one little phone call she had with Claire Danes when she was home that Claire's probably reconsidering her idea that she's going to have sex with this kid because he's annoying her.
Yes.
And he's like, now, we're going to have sex. And now he's just like being a pig. And she's like, get away from me.
No, I don't. Yeah, I think that problem goes away, I think.
But she's still fired. She's still without a job. She's still kind of, looking at who, and part of it when you're a single person is who's going to want me now, kind of a thing. And here's this guy who just arrived thinking, your brother's the coolest guy in the world. Mm-hmm. He tells me that you're the coolest chick in the world. I've seen your picture. I think you're beautiful. I've imagined us with this life together. But he does give her this speech right before the end of the thing is, we're going to spend this perfect moment together. And then, then whatever will happen will happen. So it wasn't like a happily ever after. They're probably going to get married.
No,
you don't know whether that's going to happen or not. But she's having a wonderful moment in time with this really hot guy who thinks she's kind of something.
Right. And again, 1995, we were veering away from you always had to have this and they got married scene at the end of a movie or a romance for it to be romantic.
Yeah. But they had this montage that kind of ends the film with kind of where everyone is ending up. And it includes the old movie that was alluded to, but you never really saw, of the family on the tarmac. And that was just kind of a lovely moment. But then you also saw Robert Downey Jr. and his boyfriend on the beach, and what you expect is their wedding ceremony. And even, horrible little sister had a moment. She was with her family, and the thing is, okay, so, her family of origin are not her favorite people, but she did find her group. And her kids are slightly annoying, but they don't seem too horribly awful.
And that's part, as I said, that is a flaw in that I would have liked to have seen a little bit, and it wouldn't have taken much. You didn't have to do a whole 5-10 minute scene, but a little bit more to give her, because she was a little bit 2D.
I think they tried to do that with that scene in the basement where she's on her stair stepper machine, but she wasn't sympathetic enough.
No, she wasn't. She wasn't.
Like Holly Hunter was really there trying to say, look, like we're sisters, let's have it, and I kind of thought the scene was going to go there, but you know what? Sometimes, it's not very satisfying, but it might be more realistic. Sometimes families just fall apart, and it's like, it's not meant to be.
But it is, I will say that to say this is a good movie to watch for the holidays, you do feel optimistic at the end. Yeah. And that is what you want in a holiday, in a Thanksgiving movie. It's a wordless
montage of, look, this is what family is. This is as messy as it can be, but these are our people, and then you don't know what's next. Dylan McDermott next to you on the plane with your head on his shoulder, and he's such a good kisser.
So that was that, but that one is definitely something I think people should see. It does, as I said, it's aged better than the other ones.
But it's 20 years old.
But it's correct. Yeah. Correct. So the last movie we were going to talk about, I saw this on a whim I didn't see it in the theater. I just saw, it was on, and this is like, it's from 2003. So I guess it must have been 10 years ago. So it was fairly new when it came out. Katie Holmes trying to get out of that Dawson's Creek place of being
pre-Tom Cruise Katie Holmes.
Pre-Scientology. Pieces of April. And you may or may not have heard of it.
Lovely movie.
As I said, 2003. Katie Holmes, you talk about the black sheep of a family. And this has the same dynamic as the other one. Interestingly enough, it's the same dynamic.
It's sister, brother, sister. The troublemaker. And Holly Hunter wasn't really a troublemaker. She just
had made some weird choices.
She made some different choices and had moved away. This Katie Holmes character is the black sheep
and
of
always
this
has
family.
been, apparently.
Nobody in this family really likes her. Her dad holds out hope that it can get better. But really, when you find out what the dynamic of their relationship is, nobody in this family really likes her.
Which is very, very strange. It was a very, very strange thing. But so this one is, again, leading up to, it's basically... Is it in 24 hours? It's not even 24 hours,
it's the day.
It's the
Thanksgiving
day of.
Day.
So it's 12 hours.
So you wake...
8 hours.
People waking up on Thanksgiving morning.
Right.
And it ends at the end of the day on Thanksgiving.
And so it's going up to this Christmas dinner. And basically...
Thanksgiving dinner, but
what did I say?
Christmas.
Oh, I was wrong. It's Thanksgiving dinner. Katie is... was she early 20s, 24?
Probably,
something like that.
And in the movie, I think she was supposed to be early 20s,
Yeah, so, and she's living on her own, and she clearly, she maybe dropped out, I don't remember, did she drop out of high school, or she just left?
Yeah.
She's made some poor choices.
Yeah. So really, this is two movies kind of happening simultaneously. We've got the Katie Holmes movie.
That's true, you're right. Two very big stories happening.
Yes, so we've got the Katie Holmes movie, where Katie Holmes is living, as you say, on her own, separated from her family, but she's living with a boyfriend.
A new boyfriend.
Derek Luke, who's a great actor.
He was wonderful in this.
Really good, really good. And her goal today is to make Thanksgiving dinner because her family, who hates her, are going to drive to New York for Thanksgiving. And the other movie is her family waking up in the suburbs, road tripping into the city. So the family has got, you've got mom, dad, brother, sister, and grandma, who are all in this car
road trip
going along. And then you've got Katie Holmes and her boyfriend, and then as that movie progresses, you get to meet all of her neighbors,
right? Because
her stove breaks.
Well, it's her story is trying to make the perfect Thanksgiving dinner for this estranged family of hers. That's her story. That's what she's trying to do, and that's what her new boyfriend, who is African American, are trying to do. And the reason I say African American is that's important. Her family is trying to get there. They're resentful of it, but again, the dad and the mom to an extent, but the dad really wants this to happen because then you find out things about what's going on in that family.
So let's talk about casting for the family as well, because perfect casting.
It was pretty amazing casting.
Oliver Platt and Patricia Clarkson, who I've always just loved.
So brilliant actors on their own. And to put them together as husband and wife and the mother and father of these three kids.
And complicated characters. You get pretty early on, mom's got cancer. We know she's sick. And if you have an eye for bad wigs, you can pretty much get cancer, comes to you pretty quickly. Then there's this brother and sister. And the brother, I didn't remember this was this actor, but he showed up later on The Newsroom. On HBO, and was actually one of the romantic interests of the girl who plays his sister in this movie. They're not related. It's not gross. It's okay. Allison Pill, which has ever an actress been more perfectly named for a role that she plays, because she is such a pill. But she's brilliant. Just like Cynthia Stevenson before, willing to allow herself to be just hated. She's awful. And really the entire... Well, I don't really know where the brother stands. He's interesting, but it's Dad. Dad is the one who's insisting that we're going to go to New York and we're going to have Thanksgiving dinner with April. Mom doesn't want to, but she's going. Sister really doesn't want to, and she'd turn the whole car around if she could.
The feeling is that we're trying to do this for Mom because before she dies. That's really the thing, is this might be the last Thanksgiving.
Yeah, you get the idea that if it weren't for the cancer... they would not be making this trip.
Correct.
Because they'd have, and April might not have offered had it not been for the cancer. I think they probably would have just gone their own ways.
Yes.
But because now there's this disease and, you know, there might not be another Thanksgiving for Mom.
Yes.
Let's go ahead and try to make this work. But there's a lot riding on this because no one in this movie is sure that this day is going to go well.
No, they don't know how. Nobody in this movie is sure how it's going to be when they meet. When they just get together, there is no promise of anything happy, much less a happy ending.
So early on in the movie, there's this lovely little bit where Katie Holmes' boyfriend presents her with these salt and pepper shakers that are shaped like turkeys. And she was like, "Where did you find these?" And he says, "Well, they were at the thrift store." She's like, "We had these when I was a little kid." But she was like 5 or 6 years old. And she says, "I remember picking one up and my mom said, 'Put those down. They're worth more than you are.'" This was not a scene that was played for laughs, right? You know, although he does say, "Well, what happened to him?" And then she casually mentions that she destroyed them later on.
She said, I destroyed them with a hammer I was holding.
Yeah. A hammer that I was holding just happened to fall on top of them.
Something like that.
Something like that. So a little bit of it, you know, but you get, like, this family has not been in a healthy place for her whole life.
Correct. And what happens, though, is though she tells him that about the salt and pepper shaker, she then takes the ones that he's gotten and throws them in the trash can, and then she bursts into tears.
Yeah.
And you know, and he's very apologetic. He certainly didn't. He said, "I had no idea."
Yeah.
But it, as you said, it tells you that this has been a long time. She has not gotten along with this family, and especially the mother. And I will tell you, Patricia Clarkson, you talk about somebody else who's not worried about being hated. Yeah, she has cancer, and sometimes, honestly, in this movie, that's the only sympathetic thing she's got going for her.
That, and she's funny. I mean, she's
funny, but she's in that mean funny.
Yes, but she's mean. She's mean and she's funny. There's a similar kind of scene that happens in the other movie, which is the road trip movie, where they're trying to, and the mother actually challenges the entire car to come up with a happy memory that involves April.
Oh my gosh.
And nobody can do it.
Nobody can do it.
You know, and
she keeps coming up with ones, and they're like, "Nope, that was the other sister."
Yeah, that was me. And then when Dad finally comes up with one, she was asleep. And it is kind of a funny moment. Oh, come on.
And then that's
your happy moment. Right. She was sleeping.
And so then she gets out of the car and she's like, "I'm hitchhiking back." The mother's like, "I'm out." I can't even think of a happy moment that she was conscious.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is a very, very sad, sad, sad thing.
And you look at Katie Holmes in this movie and you think, well, she seems fine. But then you hear stories about her growing up. Apparently she set fire to the kitchen at some point. And they just allude to it like a family would. They don't rehash the entire story for our benefit. No. They just talk the way a family would. Clearly they went through something big when April almost burned the house down at one point.
But there were a lot of little things that she did.
And
she was never...
No. She was never the daughter that they expected to have. And, you know, she was trouble. And they have these other two kids who were in the back seat
who seem
regular into it. I mean, you know, little sister is such a pain in the ass and so condescending and you just hate her. But it's the
same as the other one, Cynthia's.
Yep.
In that she's resentful of the time and energy that her parents. And her thing is now, why are we going? Why are we going now? She has done nothing for us. Why do we have to do this? And you put that to the age of the child. The child, her age.
But there's also, you know, and there's something about Alison Pill's performance, which again, hate the sister, but love the actress.
She did a great job.
The way she takes care of her mom, who's got cancer, is so performative. You know, it's so for the benefit of everyone around her.
Yes.
You know, and when Grandma approaches the car, she's like, "Hello, Grandma. I'm your granddaughter." And it's so... it's not sweet for the sake of Grandma. It's for everyone around her to see what a perfect grandchild I am.
Yeah, no, she needs to get credit. And that's why when they're like, well, I remember when April did blah, blah, and she says, "No, that was me." And the brother's like, "Why are you jumping in? Let them have that. Let them think that was her." And she's like, "No, because that was me. It's just, it has to be truth. It has to be what's real."
Yeah.
As opposed to the brother who would have let them, if they had thought of a memory that was really him, but they thought it was April, he would have let it go.
Yeah.
Because it was something again, there was he's a little older.
And he's the boy.
And he's more mature. Oh, yeah, he didn't have
and
the issues.
And he's the boy. He didn't have to
issues.
compete with April because he's the boy.
He didn't have the issues.
And then Grandma was just...
She's in dementia. She doesn't remember.
She is, but then she has these flashes of clarity, which are,
moments, yeah.
Great little moments. I don't think she's nearly as off her rocker as people think she is, but I think she allows them to think that. There's a her best moment. Alice Drummond is the actress, and the best moment she has is when Mom has done something especially cruel, actually, to one of the kids who's in the car, and she says, "Who are you?" And she goes, "Oh, shut up, Mom. You know who I am." And she goes, "No, my daughter was kind. I don't know who you are." And it's just this, and it just kind of lands like a thud. And it's just like, oh, it's one of those moments where, Patricia Clarkson, she's angry. She's angry at this daughter she never got along with. She's angry because cancer is eating her alive. Yep. Things should be fucking different. Like, she deserves something better than this shit. And she's mad about it. And, like, we say all of that, hysterically funny, this movie.
Very well written. Very funny. And again, it sounds like these are just really depressing. And it's like, why do you want me to watch this? Because it's real. And I think that's the thing about this Thanksgiving thing, is that it's not what is on the package of the Stouffer's dressing. You know what I mean? That's not what real is. Yeah. Real is not the Norman Rockwell painting. These are slices of life. Yeah. But at the end, again, there is optimism, there is hope, and there is a way to smile at it. Yep. And for both of those movies, Home for the Holidays and Pieces of April, I feel like because there is this realness to it, and at the end there's optimism, you can relate to it and then say, well, I can probably get through whatever. Yeah.
Now, what we haven't talked about is a big part of two big parts actually of the Katie Holmes movie that's happening. It's not just her cooking. What happens to her is her stove breaks, right? And so she has to run up and down the stairs and try to find someone who is willing on Thanksgiving Day who will let her make a bird in their stove. And she comes, and there's one neighbor who is not at all helpful, who is Sean Hayes playing the creepiest.
My gosh.
Just creepy.
He was hysterical.
Very funny, but creepy. So it's not too goody sunshine. Doesn't everyone in the poor neighborhoods of New York all just get along with each other?
Oh no,
this is the weirdo that that your mother warned you about when you got to walk up in New York. But then there's also a black family and a Chinese family, which it was nice to see some diversity. After watching Planes, Trains, and Automobiles and Home for the Holidays, it was kind of nice to go, oh, this is a different life. Great scene. Lilias White plays Yvette, the neighbor. And when she comes in, she goes, she knocks on the door. Lilias White opens it up.
April knocks on the door. This is the first door she's opened. Yes. The first neighbor she's gone to.
And she opens the door and she goes, I have a problem. And Yvette basically says, I would love to hear your white girl problems, and laughs in her face for what is probably a full minute.
I would love to hear what you, a white girl, in your youth, with your health, considers a problem. And then she laughs.
And April's face just falls, and she's like, this is not going to go well to me. Cut to Yvette on the couch crying, hearing about her mom with cancer. And just, so it's not, but so anyway, this couple, Yvette and Eugene, come up with this plan that you can put your bird in our stove for the first such time, but then you're going to have to find another stove because we got Thanksgiving to make. And she's like, deal, that's awesome. So they have a bunch of great scenes with them. And then after she deals with Sean Hayes being a weirdo, she finds this Chinese family that she can barely communicate with, but they're more than happy to, because they're not celebrating a big American Thanksgiving. So they're more than happy to help her, finish her turkey. And then at the end of the movie, a little bit of a spoiler, before it all kind of works out the way it's meant to work out, April thinks, well, my family's not coming. So she ends up feeding Thanksgiving dinner to this Chinese family from downstairs. And even though, my family kind of abandoned me, it's going to be okay. Because look, here's my boyfriend. He loves me. Here's this Chinese family who helped me. There are good people out here in the world. Life is going to be all right. And then, spoiler alert, the family, the two movies do converge at the very end, but barely. There's hardly any dialogue between...
I don't even know if there's any dialogue, because what happens, because the brother is a photographer. Yeah. And so the mother is making him take pictures of all things, because she says, this is for me later. Yeah. And what happens is the mom knocks on the door. April goes to get it after she's, put a plate down in one of her Chinese neighbors at the table for them. and it's her mom, and suddenly it reverts from video to just still photography.
Yeah. And there are moments of movement.
But it's...
Because I remember there's a scene where there's a little bit wordless scene where April and Beth, the younger annoying sister, are kind of talking, and Beth wipes away a tear and is like, and it's like, okay, so that relationship's getting healed as well. But it doesn't... I appreciated that choice because I think anything that tried to give you the happy ending at that point in dialogue just would have seemed a little forced, but this totally worked. And it is, at the end of the movie, as mean as some of these people have been and as much pain as they're in on both sides, it's what Thanksgiving ought to be. It's a great Thanksgiving movie. Yeah,
it left with, again, there was that optimism there. Yep. And I will tell you that when she has decided she doesn't think her family's going to be there, and again, there were no cell phones. Technology, the lack of technology that we have now, the lack of it from then does date it.
Yeah.
In that her boyfriend is he's trying to contact somebody, and he's having to wait by a payphone. And so it's this stuff that doesn't happen now. But
and that was the other piece about her movie that I wanted to mention is he's going off on this mission, and
oh my gosh,
because he's a young black man living in a poorer section of New York, the way that it's set up, it plays on your racial biases, and you just think he's involved in something that's up to no good. And as it turns out, what he's trying to do is get his hands on a suit.
Yep, because
he can look nice.
He wants to he wants it to be the perfect Thanksgiving for his girlfriend. Yeah. He's a really good guy, and it's interesting. At one point, the dad and the mom, and then she's like, she's still dating the drug dealer, and he says, "No, that guy's gone. She's got a new boyfriend," and he sounds like I'm optimistic, and mom's like, "Oh yeah, why? What? Why would you be optimistic about this one?" Mm-hmm. And he said, "Well, she said he reminds her of me," and so there's that thing that you're like. And he's a good guy. The boyfriend, the new boyfriend, is just a good guy.
Totally a good guy.
But you almost kind of, when you're watching what he's doing for this woman that he loves, and you see what Oliver Platt does for the woman. I mean, he puts up with a lot.
For his whole family, because he's doing it for April the whole movie, too.
Oh, my God. You go, yeah, she's right. He is like her dad, because he went through this whole thing. But then there's also, what I liked about it was that diversity talk, and we're not going to ignore
that there's a world out there.
That there's a world out there, but we're also not going to ignore that. And this is part of my issue with these is that this is a lot of white privilege.
Yeah.
We talked about Steve Martin yammering about not getting into first class. Yeah. That's privilege. And then, and it's white man privilege if you want to even go further. And in Home for the Holidays even. I mean, this was a white family. And, some of their issues were, not that they, Robert Downey Jr., he was gay, but they're not worried about him being pulled over for no reason. There was, that's my one thing about these movies is that they resonate with me, but that's because I'm a white girl. Yeah. And so I don't know how to the majority now of the country they play. Because I can relate to them because I've had those same experiences, but a different demographic, they're going to be a little foreign.
So we're going to take a short break, and the honorable mention that I wanted to bring up for this show does address exactly what you're talking about. So let's take a short break and then come back and talk a little bit about this half an hour mini movie about Thanksgiving, and then we'll do our final diagnosis, and then we'll wish you all happy Thanksgiving.
Open wide. It's your prescribed dose of POPeration with Eric and Stacey.
So it's Thanksgiving. This is POPeration. I am Eric.
I'm Stacey.
And to wrap up this show, the Emmys just happened a little bit ago. And one of the things that was noted at the Emmy Awards was for the very first time, a woman of color won the Emmy for writing for a comedy series. And her name is Lena Waithe. And not only is she a writer, but she also plays Dee on Master of None. Have you ever seen Master of None?
I've seen a bit of it, and the reason I haven't seen any more is because I haven't had time.
Yeah.
But it is fabulous, and I have friends who absolutely love it.
Yes, and Aziz Ansari, who created the show and does a lot of the writing on it, he also shared in her Emmy because they co-wrote this episode. Yep. He's hysterical, and then she's just a riot as his friend who happens to be an African-American lesbian. Now, this episode is Season 2, Episode 8. And if you've never watched Master of None ever, this could be the first episode you watch. You don't need to know anything else about the show to watch this because it takes place over a span of years. In 34 minutes, we go through 6 Thanksgivings at Denise's house. And it starts when they're little children.
Okay.
And so they've got these 2 child actors playing Denise and Dev as kids. And she's dressed in this really frilly dress because it's Thanksgiving. And he's this little boy, and they don't really understand race all that much. And so Mom and Aunt Joyce and Grandma are kind of all around the Thanksgiving table as well. Now, Mom is played by Angela Bassett. And she's Mom throughout the entire episode. Much. So eventually these child actors get replaced by the actors we know, but she is Mom throughout the entire thing. So you get to see her, span. It's 20 years of Thanksgivings, 6 Thanksgivings that are done in 34 minutes. You see these little snippets of these things that go through time, and it really does function like a little mini movie. Aunt Joyce is hysterical. So Angela Bassett's sister is there. One of the most touching scenes in the whole thing is when Denise actually comes out to her mom as gay. But there's also, when they're still kids, there's one moment where she comes down in the clothes she wants to wear for Thanksgiving, which are kind of boyish, so there's kind of scenes all along. The last 3 Thanksgivings you see, Denise brings home a girl for the first time, and it's awkward because the family doesn't quite know what to do with Denise's girlfriend, even though the audience, is getting like, she's great, The 5th Thanksgiving, she brings home a girlfriend who is awful. And at that moment, everyone just kind of goes, okay, I was uncomfortable with the whole lesbian thing, but this has nothing to do with that. She's terrible. And then the 6th Thanksgiving, she brings home the original girlfriend back, and the family is much more willing to kind of deal with her because, oh, thank God that, the other one's not here anymore. And then Aziz Ansari is there as Dev, her lifelong friend who spends every Thanksgiving, because he comes from an Indian American family that doesn't celebrate, he spends Thanksgiving at her house. They've kind of set up this construct where he's always there at Thanksgiving as well. And he's the only man at the table. So it's this, single mom with her sister and her mom and then her daughter.
African-American.
And then her daughter, so these 5 black women and Aziz Ansari having Thanksgiving.
Well, it does sound like hijinks could ensue.
It is. It's touching. It's warm. Angela Bassett is fucking amazing, as she always is. But when you see her span 20 years in a half an hour, I mean, it really is. If you don't have time to watch a movie on Thanksgiving, this could be a tradition. Just pull up Season 2, Episode 8 of Master of None. It is a little mini movie. I mean, it is part of this. And
it might get you addicted to the whole thing.
It might, because it's such a brilliant show. I can tell they earned every inch of this Emmy Award that they picked up. It's lovely. And quite frankly, after I watched the 3 movies we were going to talk about, I was like, wow, these are really white. And I said, isn't there another story out there? And when I came across this one, I was like, oh, we have to talk about it. We called this show Thanksgiving at the Movies, but this is like a little mini movie. I mean, it really does work that way.
Well, and I think it's 2017, and this, the whole YouTube, Netflix streaming, Amazon Prime streaming, that's way different from anything that was happening in 2003, 95, or 89.
Yep.
So it's kind of the way that entertainment is going.
Yeah.
And so that's where we're going to find those movies now. I guess I'm really happy it's there, because that was part of my problem with these 3 movies. And again, even though I love Pieces of April, and I do think everybody should see it, and I really, really like Home for the Holidays. Before Pieces of April, Home for the Holidays was my favorite one. Yeah. I do recognize that I love it. One reason is because I can relate, and part of that is because I'm a white girl.
Yep.
Okay? Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, I don't know that I recommend that. I just don't think it held up well over the decades, and I certainly don't think it held up well from the 20th to the 21st century.
If you love it, I'm not going to judge you.
No, I don't either.
Because I get the skill behind it. It's funny.
I would like to know what the percentage of people who have not seen it since then, and then they go back, have you changed your mind about it? Maybe you haven't, as I said, but maybe you have. Mm-hmm. And why is that? But to me, I just feel like I now am very much aware when there is a lack of diversity. I understand that minorities have always had that. Mm-hmm. Okay? Hashtag white privilege. I get that. Yep. But now I am now aware of it. Mm-hmm. So I am now uncomfortable with some of this. Yeah. That disease thing that I don't ever remember. What's it called again?
Vicarious embarrassment syndrome?
Yeah. That does it to me about this kind of thing. Mm-hmm. When it is too white. It's just too, I'm just like, this isn't real. This isn't 2017. Yeah. This isn't even, my daughters might look at these movies and they wouldn't relate. They're little white girls, but they're not relating because that's not their world. That's not who
they don't live in a white bubble anymore.
They don't. And so I think it's important that things like Masters of None and others, even if they're in a shorter version, I think it's important that those stories are out there.
And I tell you, I watched the Thanksgiving episode of Master of None. I didn't have any trouble relating to what was going on here. Now, I, of course, had the gay angle to kind of, I had to come out to my mom, too. So that scene struck me. Right. But this is just a family over time, and a daughter in a particular family structure becoming who she is, even though that wasn't what anybody expected her to do. And haven't we all lived that story? And the fact that nobody around this Thanksgiving table was white didn't mean that I had a problem watching it. It was it was entirely relatable. But it didn't kind of strike me in this thing of, kind of this notion of, wow, I just see myself represented up there all the time, and I wonder what it feels like to never see your face.
Correct. I think a universal story is a universal story. Yeah. So I think that those are the ones that are going to be more timeless, and those are the ones that are going to last longer. Yep. And I think that, as I said, we've said that Home for the Holidays and Pieces of April, I think, they're worth a look. For sure, Pieces of April. Yes. But for sure, I'm going to be watching the Master Nut. This sounds great.
It's a wonderful, and it's a half an hour of your life.
Exactly.
I'm going to watch it again. I'll probably try to convince everyone at Friendsgiving to turn it on and just watch it for the half an hour that it's on. It's a perfect little Thanksgiving appetizer.
It's optimism, and I think that's what we need at this time of year. Mm-hmm. We're down to a couple of months, and this, or a month, and this year's over. Yep. And it's that whole thing, of New Year's start afresh. Who knows what the next year will bring? And this time we have this time with these people. Yep. And so it doesn't have to be the worst thing in the world. Yep. But also it is only one day. Yeah.
So I'll be having Friendsgiving with all of my friends. You're going to be in an Italian restaurant with your family because that's what you do. Yeah. Lasagna. Perfect.
Lasagna or a side of pasta, and then I'll have a little pasta on top of that. How about some cheese? So wonderful to me right now.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Happy Thanksgiving.
We'll see you the next time.
You've been listening to POPeration with Eric and Stacey. Check out our website at POPerationRoom.com for links to our blog and other extras. Don't forget to subscribe to POPeration via iTunes, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Google Play, YouTube, and other podcast locations. You can also follow at POPeration Room on Facebook and Twitter. Music provided by PurplePlanet.com.